Welcome to another episode of I Catch Killers. Sitting in a cell in a maximum security prison gives you a lot of time to reflect on life choices that you make. The fact that you're sitting in a cell like a caged animal tends to indicate that you've made the wrong choice. Today's guest spent a lot of time in prison. He was sadly travelling a well-worn path for a young Aboriginal boy who grew up in Redfern. His journey into crime started off with minor offences, stealing just so he had something to eat. But he eventually graduated to robbing banks. That could be the last we heard of today's guest. He could have been lost to a life of crime and imprisonment. But today's guest has managed to totally turn his life around, starting with completing a university degree whilst in prison. Listeners know we love stories of redemption on I Catch Killers, and today's guest has a truly inspirational story to tell. Jeffrey Morgan, welcome to I Catch Killers.
Thanks for having me.
I got to say, Jeff, the amount of people that have told me I've got to get you on the podcast, you must put out a real positive vibe to people, because so many people that I know and respect said, hey, with the I Catch Killers podcast, you got to get Jeffrey Morgan on.
Yeah, well, hopefully that's the idea of the impact that we have, or as a person or an individual, right? So I'm all about health and well-being, and obviously changing my life from where I was to where I am, and it's hopefully something that people feel that energy, that they can reach out, have that conversation, because our mission statement for our business is to change and save lives, and literally we want that energy to go out into the world, so people, whether they're from all walks of life, and I've had from each end of the scale, and we deal with that on a daily basis. So it's good to hear that.
Yeah, well, something you're doing is getting out there. Now, we'll put it up front with this. I was in the stick-ups and you were robbing banks. Now, I don't think we ever came up against each other, because otherwise the conversation could be a bit awkward. But as far as I know, we don't come up. But it's funny sitting opposite someone that, wind the clock back a bit, and I would have been chasing you and you would have been doing what you do.
It's a crazy world and a crazy life, right?
Yeah.
And but I think it's a great introduction of who I was and the byproduct I became of the environment that I was in, versus then being old enough and mature enough to learn differently and sit here with total respect for what you did and where you were. So, well,
life's a journey, and I was watching, there was a clip that you were talking about growing up in Redfern, in Everleigh Street and all that, and it was hard for you, but you said it's made you the person that you are today, and I think that's significant, because we all we go off in different directions in life, but we tend to come back to our true direction at some stage.
Absolutely, and I think that all stemmed, like, my father was someone who really wanted the best out of myself, and my mother as well, but my father was the Austrian side and had that real German mentality behind himself. So everything was about trying to be the best at everything you can be, and I think that that journey from that position into Everleigh Street, where I then became destructive and negative, into the life that I've now sort of starting to live and enjoy. It's been a massive journey and transition from that that kid that grew up with that mentality, then into destructive habits, and then learned how to rewire the whole mindset behind it.
It's interesting with those two cultural differences, like a German father and an Aboriginal mother, and then different environments. So,
absolutely.
So no wonder you're a complex character.
It was. I asked them, because I'm like, how did this come about? It was a nightclub mix.
Yeah.
So they met in the nightclub, dancing their lives away, but just to know, two totally different worlds. Dad was very regimented, Mum was very laid back, and same thing culture-wise. I think you get the same sort of mentality where Aboriginal people appreciate the small things, just Mother Earth as an example, versus the German side, the excel of excellence. And you look at all the brands,
precision of the
exactly. And you combine that both, and you've got somebody who's very driven, and obviously the athletic ability of the Aboriginal people, and put that into anything that you go into, and use it in the right way, and you come out with a great outcome.
Now, you were born in Paddington.
Yes.
So was I. A lot of good people start off in Paddington. But your early years, you grew up in Walgett.
I grew up more so probably around Redfern.
Right.
Elizabeth Street.
To what age? What?
So I was about 12 with
Yeah.
my father, and we also, I should clarify that we bounced between houses. My dad didn't have much. They were fighting quite a lot, parents.
Yeah.
So we're back and forth between mother and father. She'd
So
take me.
both in the Redfern community?
So mum was between Redfern and Walgett. So mum
Yep.
would take me up to Walgett. Dad would take me back to Redfern, and we'd just bounce between. And I think Dad would move on a regular basis. I don't know, to try and hide from mum. I didn't really get into it. I was too young at the time, and I just remember having no stability at that point in time. I went to the same school, Redfern Primary School, the whole time throughout.
Yeah.
But it was just constantly moving between places. And a great example of that, I sat in Redfern Street probably at about 10 years of age, or old enough to remember, and my father and mother said, "Who do you want to live with?" And I kept saying, "I'll live with you both." And they're like, "No, you've got to pick one."
That's a hard choice to be thrown at that age, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I just think that says a lot about where they both possibly were within their lives for whatever reasons. And
were they struggling with things?
I think Dad was a gambler.
Right.
And you know, my uncle's told stories where he gets paid on a Friday. He'd come over Friday evening and say, "Hey, I'll grab something out of the fridge to eat." And there was nothing in the fridge. And he'd say, "Oh, you're doing the shopping later." He goes, "I've got no money. I've lost it on the horses."
Yeah.
And he says, he'd be like, "What are you going to eat?" And he said, "Oh, we've got potatoes and water until next week." So literally that was Dad's sort of mentality, whereas Mum was just laid back, easygoing lady, loved playing cards and sort of gambling in that sense.
Yeah.
But it wasn't nothing major. It was just get down Redfern, they'd all sit around playing cards, and it was, they wouldn't lose their whole wage within a short period of time. And Mum always worked as far as I knew as
You
well.
have brothers, sisters?
Yeah, so 8 brothers, 2 sisters.
Okay.
Big family, and a lot of the family on the brother side went down the same path as myself. Unfortunately, they went down a deeper or darker sort of path.
Yeah. We'll talk about that, because I know that's had an impact on you.
Yeah.
But in my time that I've been speaking to you, there's, as I said, it's always a positive outlook on life, which is.
Absolutely.
But it was a tough upbringing. Like I'm in the research and prep for this, and it's not something that you've told me specifically, but that you would come home, and if you got home late, you mightn't get a position on the mattress because there's 13 people sleeping in the same room, and you might have your head on the mattress and you're laying on lino.
Absolutely. So staying at a friend's house and knowing that you were going to get a bed or even a lounge was like massive. So if I could stay at somebody's house, I'd stay at somebody's house, because I knew if I got home later than a particular time, I was trying to share a foam mattress that was down on the lino floor that was dirty, cockroaches, rats, you name it, and that was just normal. So, and we were all, when I say that, it was the best community, and it was a great feel, and I felt family orientated as much as it was dysfunctional when you look back on it. But it was always about making sure that everyone was as right as they could be with what they had. And I think that's a great lesson for life as well.
Because as much as it's struggle street, there are some benefits of being raised by a community like that. And I know that from Indigenous communities that I've visited through work, and the children are raised, it mightn't just be by the parents, it's raised by the communities, the aunties, uncles, and everyone.
Absolutely. And everyone, the good thing about that community, I could go around the block in Redfern at the time, the block, and make a sandwich in somebody's house if I wanted to, and trust me, I did, because you get home, same principle, if you got home late, there would be no food left. Full stop. So it was then about going out, talking to someone who was older, who was making money. Give me some money, and that became just a normal behaviour and habit. And we get $5 off somebody and run up the shop and buy a meat pie. Back then I think it was $1 or something.
And I suppose as a kid, because you don't know what's out there in the world, so you would have just thought that's the norm.
Absolutely. It was just, as I said, those habits and rituals that were built into my mindset, that was absolutely normal. And my whole life of crime, I was thinking about even coming here, I just thought it was totally normal. That's how you survived, and that was it. And every time I thought about going and trying to change my life, it just became very scary. So I just went, oh, I'm comfortable here. And I think a lot of people now doing what we do on a mental health and wellbeing level, I understand that people don't step across that line of fear because they're scared of what's on the other side. And that was the same for myself and everybody within that circle. A lot of them wanted to change. We'd have conversations in the prison yard, but they'd go out and they'd go through these whole bunch of processes, which I understand and I totally respect. But if there's a way of actually bringing positive light and less failure on that journey through those steps that they're taking, it won't dishearten the person, and we can actually create better change for the individual that wants to change.
There's a couple of things that I think's interesting in the way that you've changed your view. Like you thought round about the age of 12, your old man was very strict, but now you realise he was good.
Absolutely. Everyone in the area, Waterloo, Redfern, I was on Elizabeth Street, straight across from Redfern Park. We'd go across, and the old Redfern Oval was there, South's home ground at the time.
Yeah.
We'd play footy, and I'd have to be home by 5 o'clock. And for me, everyone would be out during summer up until, it got dark, so 8, 9 o'clock at night, playing football, crossing the park. We weren't doing anything wrong, but to be home at 5, I just thought he was very strict. Later on in life, it's helped me immensely. I look back on all the discipline and structure that he really put into my life, and it's come into play. And the saddest thing about it, him and Mum, both never saw the good side of me. They never saw me change my life, and they both saw me.
They're not with us now?
No, they both passed on from cancer, and I was in jail when they both passed on. So
that's tough.
Yeah, but in the end, like that's the life I chose, and I accept that, and I think, and I don't blame anybody for anything of that nature, and I'll get that off my chest before any other questions go down. Mate, I take full ownership of the journey I was on. It's just, as a kid, as you said before, you honestly think it's just totally normal. That was how I woke up, and that was my 9 to 5. Yeah. And you're just like, oh, it's not.
I think it's really interesting for people listening, because it's very easy to judge someone's gone down a life of crime, and I'm hoping one thing that comes out sitting down speaking with people like yourself, that they understand that that life's not fair, but circumstances sort of things happen because of the circumstances that people are placed in. So to sit and judge, who knows how someone would react if certain things happen to you.
Absolutely. And I think if you get just the right person at the right time, you can affect change really quickly, because it's not as ingrained, or even if it is so ingrained, they might have had an experience where they just said, I've had enough. But if they get to that point where they've had enough, they go through all those motions again. You're not showing up at the right times. You're not doing X, Y, and Z around your parole, as an example. You get the individual who says, stuff, it's too hard, it's easier that way. Yeah. And I know everybody, if I go back, who cares?
I'll just go full gangster, who cares?
Yeah. And that's what happens. And the way I see that, that's going to impact a member of the community at some point in time. And whether that's on just a low-level crime versus, something that you used to do ends up in, in a position where someone's laying there that shouldn't be laying there.
Well, it's interesting when we talk crime, because this is my observation. I've seen it where the smaller crimes, if they go unchecked, it's easier to just go, okay, start, breaking into houses, start robbing people, rob banks, carry a gun, then someone's dead. And you see it. And you look, and it's almost like you could stop it at any point and break that cycle. Just going back to the tough love with your old man, because I speak to a lot of people, and that type of, if you've got one person in your life that can really steer you in a direction and can make a very big difference.
Absolutely. And that, I think, people might not admit this, but I've had police officers during the journey say, what do you do it, Jeff? I've had so many officers, especially what we did towards the end, a lot of major crime squad officers sit down and sitting in the dock, and I said, I don't understand why you do it. You're so smart. Like, honestly, some of the stuff you thought about and leading up to the crimes that you committed and how you operated, if you use those same skills and put them elsewhere, and that got my mind ticking as much as, and if it gets my mind ticking, it gets the next person who was a criminal at that point in time thinking as well. And I think if we did that more often, and it was just not yourselves, it was somebody else within the prison system or something, you'll start to find that people actually will plant a little seed that will then grow into something.
Well, if someone
nice.
shows a little bit of faith in you and
That's
doesn't
always.
judge you, it can make a big difference. So I love your story about you were walking into a pub full of young fella boldness, and you want a beer, and you're going to pick up a girl, and someone stopped you as you're walking in the pub. Tell us that story. I think that's an
Yeah.
interesting one.
So I was probably about 16 years of age. They had a pub down at the bottom of Waterloo-ish. The old 7-Eleven used to be across the road. I can't even remember the name of the pub, to be honest.
Yeah.
And we'd go there I think it was a Thursday night, they had it open, they'd have a dance on, and we'd get down there and do our thing, and, you know, young, trying to impress a girl. And every Thursday night I'd end up slosh, going out, leaving the pub, and I remember Tony Mundine was one of the bouncers at the door at the time.
Yeah.
He said, mate, or he might not even...
That's Anthony's old man.
Anthony's
Yeah.
old man, and
Yeah.
he said, mate, what are you going in for tonight? And I said, he goes, you want to pick up a guy, right? And I'm like, yeah, I do. And he's like, what if you could do it and just stand here and not have to get drunk? Would you do it? And I said, I probably won't pick up. And he goes, stand here, I bet you will. And if you do, the deal is you don't drink anymore. I was like, deal. So we sat at the front and worked out all right. Sorry, it was in the background. and
Well, just a word that Jeff's partner's here, so he's
and it worked out all right, and the rest is history. And you know, like, and even that for me, Tony having that influence on
Yeah.
me not to drink, and I'll have a Corona here and there, but literally, you know, my partner being in the background, we had a 6-pack of Coronas in the fridge, and I'm not joking, they sat there for a year.
yeah.
So I'm not a, you know,
But that just little things like that little subtle bit of influence that someone like Tony, who had an awesome reputation at the time for a young fella like yourself,
absolutely.
and the difference it makes. You were good at sport.
Yeah, so I signed a contract when I was younger playing sport, you know, with... and I went through a lot of sports. Went and tried out for soccer, Apia,
Yeah.
and then I went to same thing. Went to South, and even during my stints, I'd come home, and Wesley Patton at the time and Daryl Trindle had organised a trial with South. Played terrible,
Yep.
and then got myself a little start up there, and did the pre-season.
So signed with South
Yeah,
Rugby League.
and
Yep.
as I think it was a rookie contract or something of that nature, where you weren't official until you actually got through the preseason.
Yeah.
We'll keep you on, or you'll drop back into. I think we had Newtown as our feeder club at the time, and just walked out of training because I was up to no good, and I just knew it was going to come back on the club. And as much as I was running a destructive lifestyle, I still had respect for the people. Blocker Roach was a coach at the time.
Yeah.
I was under 21s. And I just had respect. Alan Jones was there, Bob McCarthy, Mike Whitney. So a big group trying to do great things with the club. And it was when it really started to change.
Yeah, there are a lot of positive people in that crew that you just
Absolutely.
mentioned.
Dean Capobianco was the sprint coach. So I had all these great people around us, but I just was up to no good. And, you know, Wes obviously went down to Pathway and got himself in some trouble. Robbie, another one of the boys down the block. And we had and I won't mention too many names, but they were getting themselves in trouble whilst playing NRL. And I was thinking, I'm just going to be another one of those people, and my career will last 2 minutes.
Yeah.
It's better to stop wasting your time and be what path do you
So
want
that
to
was
choose.
going through your mind, even because I would imagine that at that age, the natural reaction, I'm going to have it all. I'm going to do the crime. I'm going to be the gangster during the week and the footy star on the weekend. But
Absolutely, and I recognised that I had to choose one or the other because I'd stay up till 4 in. At that point in time, ram raids were massive, and all Redfern was doing it was just totally normal behaviour. And you know, you finish at 4 and have to be training at 6 in, and then back up at 3 o'clock or something in the afternoon, whatever it was. And to me, that was just impossible. Wes was doing, I don't know how Wes was doing it, but it was like, for us, it was just incredible that I even contemplated those two lifestyles together. And at one point, I just recognised, hey, you got to choose one or the other. I was living in Redfern. It was the hub of crime. The community was strong, you know. So
it just shows the influence that that environment has, because I don't think there'd be a kid that was interested in football that didn't want to sign with an NRL team.
absolutely,
And to be drawn to, that's attractive, but I'm going for the life of crime. That's your environment, isn't it?
I think it was the habits and rituals that was set within my mindset that changed. I felt so comfortable there. I'd go to football training, I'd feel out of whack too, because I felt like everyone had come from a normal lifestyle.
Yeah.
So they didn't understand anything. So I'd surround myself with Daryl Trindle, Robbie Simpson was there at the time, a couple of Aboriginal boys.
Yeah.
And I'd sort of surround myself with them during the training session. A couple of other blokes I knew from the area.
Yeah.
But they all knew my past, so they were cool, and no one else knew.
And so that sense of self-worth that you're ashamed of.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd walk in with my head down, even though when we did the fitness stuff, I'd be up the front running, something my father taught me, and I'd push myself to all limits, and I'd smash the fitness side of things. And over time, people started saying, "Oh, Morgs," and I sort of felt like I was building a rapport there, but I just felt ashamed. I didn't feel like I fit in, and I felt like it was really conflicting, because you'd go back to Redfern and it'd be like F the world, and then you'd go there and it'd be like, this is the world. And
is that because of the Aboriginality or the criminal, or is it a combination of both?
I think too, like back then it was a running battle with police.
Yeah.
Growing up in Redfern, it was just totally normal, and some of the players were police officers as well, so it was a real ingrained like hate for the other side.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like a black-white thing for me ever. It was more like they're the enemy and we're this side, and it was crazy mentality, but that's built into you as just through everyday habits, and you get to a point where you then push back on that, and you're like, please pull up, I'm not going to give them my name, I'm not going to talk to them.
And I think it's fair to say, and it's not judgment in any way, but it would have been ingrained into you in certain parts of the community. Just don't like the cops, hate the cops, don't trust the cops are your enemy.
And everyone outside of our community was the enemy. So when I went to South training, I was like, I'm training with the enemy.
Yeah.
How stupid. And then I tried to talk to Trindle and another bloke, a couple of blokes that were there at the time, and just about, how do you feel? And not really, I didn't feel like I gelled in. And the same thing, I'd grown up in a way where, similar to what Spanian spoke about the other week, where it wasn't, no funerals, the only funerals were family realistically, but not funerals of other people. So people weren't inviting me because they felt like I was, unless they were in that criminal circle as well.
Yeah, we were talking about that before we sat down for the podcast, and something that Spanian, who was a previous guest, raised, that he grew up in that same type of environment, but hadn't been to a wedding or a funeral or a birthday party.
At all.
And it seemed, when he said that, it sort of shocked me. I hadn't even thought that, and the fact that you brought it up before we sat down here and talked, it's something that you could identify with.
Absolutely. And I think you got to think about, and it'd be the same, we're happy not to get the invite, we're cool with that. And people will be like, oh, I thought I was your friend, and even with the new circles that we have, but for me, I'd be like, I'm cool. And I think to a point, I've gotten a lot better. We've got a friend's birthday tonight as an example in a public place, and I've just got to a point, especially with the public speaking, the community projects, corporate health and wellbeing, that we were able to transition out of that thought process. I was thinking about what Spaniard was saying. I was thinking, you've got probably a couple of years before you feel better about that. And he will feel better about that at some point in time, because I went through exactly what he went through. And you really do. You feel isolated. So me going to that football training on a regular basis, I just felt out of place.
And it's self-esteem.
Absolutely. And I couldn't have a conversation. They'd be like talking about tax, or do you do your tax? And I'm like, what's tax? How do I do that? And like, I'd sit there and try and have a conversation to learn about life skills, I suppose, with the group, without bombing myself out and saying, what, you don't know what tax is, or something of that nature. And then I'd hear somebody say, I paid tax, but you can sort of save some money this way or that way. So I'd really take that on. Little
things, but they're big things in someone's life. And I know Shane Phillips, who you know, with Tribal Warrior, around Redfern, doing some great work there. And he was saying that it is about self-esteem. That if people feel worthless, their path sort of set for them, to give them pride in who they are and where they're from.
Absolutely. And you get, this for even any police officer that watches, when you interact with especially anyone, if they put their head down, they're more than likely embarrassed about what they're doing. Yeah. And it sounds funny, for me to say that, but it's just like, whereas you get to a point where you cross over that line, you'll get two different types, and the line of just being absolute F yous, I'm staunch, and I'm not going to tell you anything. Here's my license, throw it on the ground, and do your check, and that type of mentality. And you get those two people. You can get the people definitely to change that, put their head down. If you interact with that person in a nice way, you'll probably give them the belief that they can actually be something.
I've seen it time and again with police country towns. If you get, and Redfern for that matter, if you get a good police officer that talks to the community, the amount of difference it can make, and without judgment and that.
Versus not talking to us, and you back then you might have got a brick.
Well, I got growled at a couple of times in at Redfern, where I was welcome up in the Barraville community, and people that know my story. I worked on the murder of the 3 kids.
Yep.
Evelyn and Clint and Colleen up there. Well
documented.
And I was very much accepted in the community up there, but it was pointed out to me a few times when I came down the Redfern, hey, that's the bush, this is Redfern, this is the hood. And,
total difference.
But I understand it. But talking about your early crime, and again in preparing for the podcast, I've done a lot of research into how you started with crime, and something that made me feel, I don't know, it just resonated, made me feel sad, I suppose, is that when you first started stealing, you were stealing food.
Absolutely.
Like a kid stealing food because they're hungry.
Absolutely.
Talk us through that.
First thing I ever did was with my brother, and it was just about getting some food, full stop. That's it. Like, we knew we were late, we knew we were going to miss out, and it was just about sitting down.
And explain that, because a lot of people, I was late for dinner when I was a kid, and my mum or my old man would yell at me, but they'd still feed me. But
by the time I'd run away, Mum was totally different. I was able to go out till 9 o'clock at night and play those football games at Redfern over as an example. So getting home at 9 o'clock, any food? No food. When I say no food, I'm talking no food. So they'd buy on a regular daily basis and survive in that sort of fashion, where other people would have a fridge stacked full of food. So, Mum, I'm going to grab something out of the fridge. Total difference, right? And even just the levels of concentration, lack of food, lack of proper sleep, then trying to go to school for a kid in that sense. And then I was lucky. My parents didn't swear much, and they had a different sort of tone and language. My language changed more so once I got into the Redfern area, I suppose, and being that person. And then the change back was easy. But if those kids have a parent, I've seen it when I visited mates way back in the day in jails, kids that were standing there and they'd say, hey, stop doing that. And they'd be, honestly 5 years old, telling them to go F themselves and whatever else. And it would blow me away. And I'd like, that kid's going to end up in jail. That was the first fault of myself. And I think that's a really sad thing, because who knows what the kid's potential is, but how they're going to be wired is going to send them down that path.
It's interesting, and something you said there sort of reminds me of the time I went and knocked on the door, and the young kid answered the door, and when I talk young kid, I'm saying 4 years old.
Wow.
And hi, is mummy home, as you would talk to a kid. And the kid turned around and said, "Hey, Mum, the pigs are here."
Oh wow! And
that was
normal, totally normal.
That was normal. But that's the environment that I can't judge a kid at that age.
Absolutely.
But that's
Mate, and I've seen some of the things that the younger kids did to police cars when we were kids, and they were like, absolutely, they wouldn't even understood what they were doing. But seeing everybody else do it,
that's
we'll throw something, throw an egg at the car, and the officer would get out and say, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, sorry, the kid would be 5 years of age, and it was just monkey see, monkey do mentality, I suppose.
So when you got into the more serious crime and running with a crew and doing stick-ups, talk us through that journey.
I think, Redfern was a hub of crime. It was just, you name it. And you had, as Spaniard said, you really did. You had people who did it more so just for the drug side of things and getting their fix and whatever else. And they didn't care about clothes, buying cars, buying anything of that nature, having good times. Their good time was down that pathway. And then you had blokes sort of that were just doing it to make some good money and live a good life in their eyes. And that side of things, to start off way back when, for me, got into graffiti as a kid, become very well known within that circle. I was one of the best. Well,
so you had your tag and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, went through all that sort of behaviour, and whether that was me trying to find an identity and then being so...
And that was that taking it to the next level as well, like doing it on the train and
Absolutely.
trying to get your tag somewhere?
Absolutely, and being known, and to the point where, people I bump into these days, hey, and they still call me by my name because they still remember how destructive I was back then. And
I suppose that feeds your self-esteem at that stage too.
And because my self-esteem would have been so low, I think, at that point in time, that became my family.
Yeah.
And that same principle went through until I changed my life. Everyone else was my family. My family, my mother and father, that I felt had abandoned me and let me down in one sense. So my family was the Redfern community. My family was the graffiti community. Then it transitioned into ram raids and searching at that point in time. Then it went into bank snatches, where we snatched money off the counters, and I served time for...
Talk us through the mentality of the ram raids and all that, because that's... the way that the crime of ram raid, like there'll be a store, you just literally crash a car into it and grab what you can and take off before the cops turn up.
Yeah, I'd prefer not to crash the car into it, because no one wanted to drive the slower car, which you could understand.
Yeah.
So it was more what we could do, just sort of obviously with our own foot, sledgehammer or something of that nature. And that, as I said, that just became a normal part of behaviour. Everyone within our community, and that's where it crossed over, and that's where it got really... I think that's where it brought it undone quite a lot, because you had those two sides, and over time those two sides started to merge. So people would take out people who just wanted the drug side of things. They wanted to make money. No one was around. Let's get together. And then the problem would arise because something would happen where they spoke about it out of school, and obviously it went back, and next minute they're both sitting in a cop shop getting charged for it. So,
but you're all feeding each other too, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
If that's a community, so it's your status in that community, or the crew that you're hanging out with, is what you got last night.
Absolutely. And the biggest thing for me, though, I drew a line in the sand and said, mate, you had to be of a sound mind to do what you wanted to do. And I look back on it, and as much as I didn't think I was in that criminal world and there was so much criminality behind my behaviour, I think, obviously I was kidding myself at the time, but I just didn't recognise it. I was like, I'm just surviving. Get out the way.
That's an interesting thing, and I hadn't really considered it that way, but what was going for it? Did you realise you were bad, or you just thought that...
I don't think you ever think about it, guys?
That might.
I think it was, as I said, by the time I was old enough, and at 16 it was rampant, and you just think, this is how I survive.
When was the first time you were in custody?
I think I was 14 at the time, and I went to Yasma, which was at Ashfield. I think it's a training centre now for youth stuff.
Was that a deterrent to you?
No, because when I got there, absolutely everyone I knew was there, and
therein lies a problem in itself, doesn't it?
Big time, because straight away it's not a place of fear, and they had trampolines, swimming pools, and it was bad where you get locked in the cells and things of that nature. But I think when no one visits you, it only reinforces that they were my family. So you get some mothers that come out. I didn't get visits of my mother or father whilst I was there. Dad didn't know I was in custody.
Right.
And Mum was just, as I said, laid back. So she was like, he'll be right, sort of mentality. And getting there and seeing everybody that you knew, that wasn't a deterrent.
So it wasn't traumatic for you going in there because you had a crew in there that you knew?
The thing about it, and I heard Spaniards say this, I think it gets to a point, it becomes traumatic for yourself when you realise what you've done to everybody else. And
Yeah.
I don't know if he had that epiphany or what yet,
Yeah.
but for me, I was like, wow. And I did a radio interview that we spoke about before this, and it finished with, what would you say to the victims if you had a chance to say it to them? And I did say that I'd be willing to sit down with them and tell them who I was, why I went about the stuff that, and how I could, especially with the skills that we tap into on a neurological level, how we can try and rewire your mindset as best as we possibly can to move forward.
Yeah.
And that principle stands for any victims of crime, because I'd love to, for me, I've come full circle.
Yep.
But that would be an ultimate full circle to go back and, and we spoke about Michael Marslow, I think, even reaching out and I thought about having a conversation, say, hey, mate, here's who I used to be and here's who I am now, and I'd love to help out in any way, shape or form. Yeah, on a volunteer basis.
We'll talk further about that because I'm quite interested in that on the ways that we can break that cycle of crime.
That'd be awesome.
But on your journey into the boys' home, so you go in there and there's your mates in there, so it's basically and it would almost, I would imagine, in that environment, it would almost be like you feel like you wear it as a badge of honour.
That's exactly what it was. Going to jail as an Aboriginal kid is a badge of honour, full stop, especially as a male. And then being tough and having fights and all of that nature, that was instilled with us. So getting there, and remember where I used to sleep, 13, so to have your own bed, shower, food given to you as hard. That was my Hilton at that point in time. And it's as crazy as it sounds, all it is like counting down the days to get out. And I've always thought about if they shifted that, and I remember they did this when we were in I was in jail, I think, and the first time, and they took us out to the young offenders program and all those camps, and talking about discipline, ownership, and even reenacting the crimes in Melbourne. That was crazy. But it really made me take a reflection of who I was and who I was telling them I wanted to be, and a huge gap between both of those. And I said, how can I start to change that? And I've taken that and put it into my own program, same principle, but that was a reflection of what I saw from that little journey as well. And I think if we could do that to other kids, especially, not even kids, even some of the adults, I know when I was there, as much as we had those conversations, total different conversations. Versus, obviously blokes that are well entrenched within that system, and trying to help Johnny Killick at the time at the time when we were in the pod 11 together. And he's talking to a helicopter bloke. It wasn't going to work. I was actually in the same pod and on the phone, and he said, "Hey, Wogs, I need the phone." I was like, no worries. And
were you the guy on the phone?
On the phone. So I look back on it.
So it just so people don't or can make the connection here. One of the guests, and one of the favourite guests we've had on here, because he's an interesting person, is John Killick, and he's I think he spent 35 years in jail, and he looks at things differently now and realises that he's done wrong. But the thing that he's most well known for is probably when he escaped from Silverwater prison with his Russian girlfriend who hijacked a helicopter, which is
crazy.
It was crazy. But he did mention the bloke that was on the phone at Silverwater, and he's asking to get off the phone because he had to let I think it was Lucy. He's know that
no doubt
that we're in the yard now.
I put two and two together.
So you were involved in the Great Escape.
The funniest thing was, Johnny will laugh about this. We always, like, for me, and I don't condone crime or anything, but you got to look back on some of the things, and similar to what I think Spaniard said, this is on a different level. You just got to be real about some of the stuff. Johnny said, mate, Morgs, I really need the phone. And when we went out the Oval, we were playing football. I just scored a try, and literally we were walking back to halfway, and this helicopter had done a lap around, and it went down on the sort of golf course side of things, I think it was, and at the armory, and then it came back over and landed on the oval, and I was like, oh, this bloke's run out of petrol. This is what I was saying to myself. What a place to run out of petrol. And then next thing, Johnny had he probably doesn't remember this, but he had a green jumper on, and he'd undone the jumper and threw it like this. I blow this joint, and it was like a movie. Jumped on and I wasn't far from him, jumped on the helicopter. They ran over, went to the door. He drew the gun, and mate, it was just like crazy. And then it took off, and they started shooting at it, and we were all around the helicopter. And I was thinking, if this hits a helicopter and it veers off, we get cut in half. And
so an eyewitness to the Great Escape.
Oh, yeah. And then, I sat in the cell going, what?
Now, if you told John to go away, he's not having the phone, maybe he wouldn't have got away with the helicopter.
Absolutely. But
I think your statute barred on there. I don't think they can come after you for that.
Yeah. In the end, I don't think, they would have all known that that I was on the phone before him, and he'd asked, and, mate, I didn't know that he was going anywhere. The first thing I knew was when he jumped in the helicopter, just like every other person on the oval, and including the guards. And you look back on it, it's
crazy,
insane.
Yeah. So with the crimes that you've done, when it started to escalate, when you're robbing banks. Now that's from a policing point of view and from a crime point of view, it's a certain type of a person that starts robbing banks. So that's, I would say, and I've had people from the Armed Hold Up Squad, ex-police officers, but also ex-bank robbers and all that.
Yeah.
And everyone knows once you start to rob banks, you're playing first grade.
Yeah.
Did you realise the nature of the crimes that you were committing, or is it just kept going up and up?
As a kid, like I said, we went from ram raids into bank snatches, and at the bank snatch stage, we were so fit, we just do it on foot and park 10 blocks away and run to the car. So that alone, you think about those crimes, and I did it 3 years in boys' homes, something like that. I think I got 3 years for that in boys' homes, for a bunch of those one day. And you just never contemplated it at the time, how serious crimes were
what you're
becoming.
doing.
It was more about how we can make more money quicker, and that just went from each level, just kept going up. And then you'd think, I can make more money here, or you hear somebody else making X amount, you're like, that's what I'm going to do as well.
And what did, and I'm interested in the mindset, where you grew up and you're making money. What did you want the money for?
Yeah, you look back on it, to be straight out and honest, just to survive. That was my mentality, and I think that was so inbuilt from those years of not wanting to sleep on the floor with that many people, not having food in your fridge, and just having food in your fridge, and this is how I changed my life, and it's a great lesson for other people, especially those in the criminal world, and wanting to have something where I didn't, I had food, I had clothes, I had a nice warm bed. That was it. That was my mentality. I wasn't like, I want to be known and they make a movie about me or anything of that nature. I just wanted to be, I know Spaniard went down that path, but for me, I was in survival mode. And how I changed my life from that criminal behaviour, one of the things I started to tell myself is, how much do you make in jail a week? And it was, for me, I was a Aboriginal mentor to everyone, so I could get around the pods. That was my little role within the system. At the time, that was $60 a week. So I said, if I could have $60 outside, free, no police chasing me, some warm clothes, nice bed, and some food in the fridge, I'm happy.
You're doing okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's been my mentality. I've been at points with the business when my brother committed suicide, that I was able to just, I went through a huge struggle for 18 months, didn't make much money, I was struggling, I was bills stacking up, and I never once thought about crime, because I kept saying,
don't go down that.
Yeah, I'd rather have $60 in my pocket or nothing, but be free.
Yeah.
And
that's interesting too. Did you have that in prison? Did you have that sense that your freedom's been taken away? Were you bouncing off the walls? Did it
I'd say, yeah, definitely, because I was someone who, I just, you look at my social media and you get an idea. I love being free. I love living life. I could look at a tree, and my partner's the same, and appreciate a tree, just the simple things. And if I had a nice car, beautiful. If I had, but it didn't matter to myself. And I think that's what jail taught me too. I was and I'm grateful for. I don't need everything. I just need freedom.
Yeah.
And on the back end of it, if I end up with a nice car, I live in a nice place, got a beautiful part.
That's the icing on the cake, but it's not the...
Absolutely.
Because you talk about you like your connection to country and getting away in the bush, and so it must be hard being thrown into
Absolutely, and not
four walls and bars.
Absolutely, and not being able to do what you want when you want, and that I sat there many a night, and people that, some people, I think some people just get into the motions of things, but you do think about it. You do sit there, and I've spoken to other people, and they do, whether it's family, whether it's life in general, what you want out of life. Am I going to keep doing this? How long do you want to do it for? What do you want to get out? Then I started to say, what do you want to get out of it? If you bought everything from the money that you're making illegally, it'll probably get taken anyway. What if you use the same skill set you've got? And a lot of the skills are there. The grind, mate, I used to stay up sometimes 24 hours to make money or watch something to make sure I could come back at the right time. And for me to look at something of that nature, if I said, mate, if you can do it for there, why can't you do it here?
I've often looked at that from a policing point of view, and I know with professional crooks how much effort they put into things.
Absolutely.
And some of them are quite smart. I'm thinking if you turned that into a legitimate work, you'd probably have to earn more money and you'd work less hours. But,
absolutely. And I always said, what's the skill sets you're good at? You got determination, perseverance, commitment, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Loyalty. And you put that into your own business, or if you want to work for somebody else, you excel and you go to a high level really quickly. And what I have noticed, those that have chosen to do that and change their life have been really successful within their life because they're using the same skills but just in the right way this time.
That's how you're looking at things now, but there was a time there, and I've heard you talk about when you were going to rob a bank and you thought the police had surveillance on you, but absolutely. Your crew, you still did it anyway.
That's crazy.
And tell us about that. And there was someone, that you thought was surveillance, and you still went ahead with it.
Yeah, it was the last bank I was arrested for. It was in Melbourne, and I just felt that we were being watched at the time. I sort of started to get a bit of a feel, and I was like, I think we're under surveillance. And the boys at the time were saying, you're freaking out, don't worry about it. And then I ended up seeing this one car in 3 different locations, and I said, mate, drive up this driveway, and if this car comes up, we're under surveillance. Even under the driveway, I said, mate, we're under surveillance. Let's just walk away, get done for the car at the time. And they're like, nah, don't worry about it, you're freaking out. And, mate, they would have grabbed us already. And we parked the car, come back the next day. There was a van with black tints on it right in front of the car. And I said, mate, listen, I'm not going to that car. Yeah. You go to the car. And if you get arrested, I'm running off. Just so you know, I'm clear as day because I'm not vibing with this. And that was literally... the mentality of us at the time. Yeah. How crazy you getting watched And
had you moved down to Melbourne at that stage? Was it that was a Sydney job?
So we went from Sydney to Melbourne for that specifically. And when we were the same thing, we were lucky because they had the tactical response. They call them something else down there. On standby. But we'd looked at another bank. And they were waiting at the other bank, and we were lucky that we went to this one. Otherwise, we would have come out to them, and who knows
Man in
what.
Black, and
exactly right. And as you said before,
if you're armed up and they're armed up.
And what happens at that point in time, and I just think it's insane that we still went ahead with it at that point in time. Came out of the bank and. A bloke went up on the gutter and tried to block the bank doors. We jumped across the car, and then this motorbike chased us. And I just remember saying, I think that bloke rode either a professional rider or he's a motorbike copper. Yeah. And we later found out he was an actual surveillance motorbike police officer. Yeah. So, and to go through with that, that's how deeply entrenched in that behaviour we were. We're just and I think I had a huge loyalty to the group. Yeah, that same group. We were friends since we were kids, and we'd been through so much, and none of us had rolled over on us. Yeah, we were staunch. So we're really tight as a crew, and I think over the years, as you know, within that circle, many people break up within crews. Someone sleeps with someone's partner, or someone robs the other person, or something, someone dobs them in. And we were staunch together as kids all the way through until that point. And that helped me change my life, because in Melbourne, after that arrest...
So you got arrested in Melbourne?
Got arrested Friday the 13th. It was a great day.
Bit ominous.
It all went down. It was just ridiculous. It was a comedy show in the end. But, like, I look back on it and I think to myself, we went in, we were on remand at the time. We ended up getting bail because there was some sort of law, until proven guilty, you could get out on bail.
Yeah.
We rode that and got out on bail. And when we went back in, we started doing some other stuff, went back in, got arrested again. And when we were in there, they didn't want to mess themselves up for sentencing. And at that point in time, the loyalty broke. And I went, if this is who's got my back. And I'd done a lot of other stuff in the background. I was doing courses. I was trying to change myself. I was just going down a different path. I just went, that's it. I'm going to cut ties. And
how long did you get for that stick up?
I got 9 years with 7 years on the bottom. So
Okay.
I served the 7 years.
And how long had you been in custody before that? How many years had you done before that?
I'd say probably I did 5 years for another bank before that. So that's 12, and then up 3 years as a kid for the bank snatchers, and just...
So it's adding up, isn't it?
Yeah, like
how old were you when you got that 9 with 7 on the bottom?
It was in 2003, and I got out 2007, so I would have been 30, 2 or 3, 30.
Yeah, well, it's almost at that cut-off point, isn't it, when you've been doing probably 1/3 of your life or more
absolutely
in custody, and you had to make a decision to turn your life around.
Yeah,
so
I think that, and I'd only been out 6 months from a 5-year sentence, so I served like nearly 12 years. Out of.
I wonder about that. Like, it's must be a mentality, because if you've served that many years and you're out and you're enjoying the freedom, and then Jesus, I've just thrown it all away again.
It's crazy. And I actually came out and worked for the first time that time. I came out, I was married at the time, and then started to work for the first time in my life. And same thing, little dabble here, little dabble there, and next thing, the ball's rolling, and you get yourself in some trouble. So,
all right, well, look, I think this might be a good time for us to take a break. If I didn't know you and I was listening to your story and I was a gambling man, I'd be saying there is no way you're going to turn your life around. But lucky I don't gamble, because that's exactly what you did. So we'll leave part one at the point where you're about to start your sentence for bank robbery, and it's 9 years. And when we come back for part two, we'll talk about how you turned your life around, and because I think I really think it's amazing, and I hope people are listening to. You've been so honest with us and saying, well, this is why I did it, this is how I did it. You're not making excuses. So when we come back for part two, we'll talk about how you made those changes.
Awesome. I think it's important to be, like, if I'm really serious about change, just ownership, accountability, responsibility for everything that you did. And everything, as I said, as much as I tell you that, I don't tell you with pride. I don't tell you with anything other than the fact that I'm saying, hey, that's who I used to be, here's who I am now, and let's move on from
And this is what's happened.
And hopefully viewers, whether from all walks of life, get some sort of lesson along that journey that helps them just make the right decision.
I reckon that's so important, and it's something that I've been thinking a long time with the podcast, that the guests that we get on, people are going, well, is this glorifying crime you're talking about? We have a bit of a laugh on things that happen. No, it's not glorifying crime, but it's not one-dimensional crime.
Absolutely.
And you got to look at it from all sides. So let's take a break now, and we'll be back shortly.